Greetings, glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to people of good will. So I was recently in one of those playa bowl spots, and they had these little stickers which depict a palm tree decorated like a Christmas tree. And that got me thinking about a topic that I've wanted to make a short video on, so here we are. Now, some may remember that last year I made a video titled The Christmas Tree in the Qur'an, which noted that one of our earliest extant references to the Christmas tree is a German source, which mentions that the fir tree which was used was intended to symbolize a date palm, and children shook that little fir tree, causing dates and other treats to fall from that tree. And so in that video, I drew a parallel with the Quranic account of the birth of Jesus, which has Mary shaking dates off of a date palm. And in this short video, I wanted to ever so briefly explore this playful question. Which tree should be the Christmas tree? The date palm or the evergreen? And please don't take this question too seriously, or at least don't expect a super serious, definitive answer to the question. I do have another video on the Christmas tree, which does present a more in-depth argument in favor of the evergreen tree as appropriate Christian symbol and appropriate symbol for Christmas. And I'll share a link to that video in the description. But in this video, I'd like to more playfully answer the question, why not both? And in a playful attempt to support both sorts of trees as appropriate symbols for Christmas, I'd like to appeal to this book, Megilah Ḥitsonit le-Bereshit, mi-Megilot Midbar Yehudah, the apocryphal scroll to Genesis from the scrolls of the Judean wilderness. In other words, the Genesis Apocryphon from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is a type of Aramaic midrash on Genesis, which was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in specifically Cave 1. And you see the editors at the bottom there, נחman, Avigad, and Yigael, Yedin. And as you can see here, it was published in Jerusalem. And for the year, it says 717. That's short for 5,717 on the Hebrew calendar, which would correspond to 1956 or 1957. And it was apparently published jointly by Hebrew University and the Israeli Museum, which is called the Heichal HaSefer, the Temple of the Book, typically called the Shrine of the Book, which is the current home of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And as one flips through this book, one finds alternating pages with photos of the different columns of the scroll on the left and a clearer transcription of the text on the right. But I want to look at specifically a bit of text that appears in column 19. And in this column, Abraham, before he was named Abraham, so Abram, recounts a dream he had, and then he interprets that dream for his wife, Sarai. And this text is offering a sort of midrashic commentary on Genesis 12, expanding on the details of Abraham asking his wife to say that she was his sister while they were in Egypt. And so the text begins with Abraham recounting as follows, quote, I, Abram, dreamt a dream in the night, end quote. Now, the text more specifically says this was the night that he went into Egypt, and he continues, quote, I saw in my dream, and behold, one cedar and one date palm, end quote. And the word for cedar there is arz, which is spelled exactly the same as the Hebrew word erez. And the word for date palm there is tamar, which is also the same word in Hebrew. And then he adds, quote, sons of man, i.e. men, came and wanted to uproot the cedar and to leave the date palm. But then the date palm shouted and said, do not cut the cedar, as the two are from the same root, end quote. Now, let me interrupt here with a bit of a technical note. While it might be hard to see, I've marked certain letters, specifically 3 different letters in the last 3 words in blue. And I did that to signify where my transcription differs from the transcription which appears in this book. So I have a nun where the book has a fe, that's in the 3rd to last word, and I have a reish where this book has a dalet, and I have a shin where this book has an aleph for the last word on that line. Now, in the scroll itself, the relevant letters are hard to make out, and thus they're open to interpretation. And so aside from consulting this work, I also consulted the transcriptions in the Dead Sea Scrolls Study Edition, which was edited by Florentino, García, Martínez, and Eibert, Tigchelaar. And when you consult that work, you see their transcription and basically their interpretation of those specific harder to read characters, and they sided with those different 3 letters. In other words, their transcription had trena min shoresh, the two from the same root, from root, the two from the root or the two from a root. And that's the interpretation that I'm siding with, as I think it makes more sense in this context. And so, getting back to where we were in the text, Abram's dream had some men coming to cut down a cedar tree and a date palm intervening, asking that the cedar be spared, as the two trees are from the same root. And then the text goes on to say that the cedar was left in the protection of the date palm. In short, the cedar tree was spared thanks to the intervention of the date palm. And then from there, the text has Abram tell his wife about his dream, but he doesn't merely recount the details of that dream for her, rather he interprets the dream for her, right? He explains the meaning of the dream. See, in his interpretation, he explains, quote, "They want to kill me and leave you alone," end quote. And then he explains to Sarai that if she says regarding him that he's her brother, his life will be spared. And so what's clear from this story is that Abram's dream about the cedar tree and the date palm tree was a warning about the dangers he would face in Egypt and how he might avoid getting killed, right? And so the date palm intervening on behalf of the cedar tree, convincing men not to chop it down by saying that the two trees come from the same root, that symbolized Abram avoiding getting murdered because Sarai said that they were siblings. In short, in the dream, the cedar tree symbolized Abram and the date palm symbolized Sarai. And this isn't merely based on some modern reinterpretation. Rather, we find that symbolism in ancient Jewish thought, in an ancient Jewish commentary on Genesis. And with that in mind, to answer the question which was asked at the outset, we could playfully say that both can serve as Christmas symbols, as both can symbolize ancestors of Christ himself. The cedar tree represents Abram, and the date palm represents Sarai. But perhaps we don't have to settle for this mere extra-biblical commentary. We can go to the Bible itself, as Psalm 92:12 uses the very same trees, the very same words, Tamar and Erez, as allegories for the righteous man, the tzaddik. And of that righteous man, the psalm says, Katamar yifrach, like a date palm he will sprout up. Ka'erez belebanon yizgeh, like a cedar in Lebanon he will increase. And who's more righteous than Christ himself, our very paragon of righteousness? And so perhaps it might be said that, aside from the Genesis Apocryphon, this psalm allows the Christian to see both the date palm and the evergreen as appropriate symbols to represent Christ, and therefore appropriate symbols for Christmas. But with that, I'd like to close this playful video here. As always, I welcome any comments, questions, or criticisms, so feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative, and God bless.